Okay, so this is Intermediate Algebra, Section 5.8. We have been factoring and just factoring. We were stopping there. We were doing it. And now then we are going to go ahead and solve for x after factoring. So that's where we're going to pick up on this lesson. There's 14 questions. We'll see how many videos this ends up being. I assume we'll probably be at about 2, maybe 1. So our first question, solve the following equation. They already have it factored for us, but I want you to know when we have the problems like this, and I'll write it all out, so that times 5x subtract 6 times 7x plus 2. We're going to take each of these already factored out problems and make them all equal to 0. So we'd have 5 equals 0, which is not true, so this one is, we'll just put false under it. That one, it's not true. 5x subtract 6 equals 0 here, and then 7x plus 2 equals 0. And then we're going to go ahead and solve each of these two for 0 or for x. So add 6, we have 5x equals 6, divide by 5. 6 doesn't divide by 5, so x equals 6/5. Subtract 2 here, so 7x equals -2. Then we would divide by 7. So x equals -2/7. So our solution set would be -2/7 and 6/5. And let's see how they want us to do it. They give us the little bracket things, so we're going to just type in both of these. So -2/7, comma, 6/5. Do not forget the comma. Comma is very, very important. Our second problem, 12x squared plus 17x subtract 5. So this one we do have to factor. 12x squared plus 17x subtract 5 equals 0. So when we go to factor this one out, we need to find the factors of 12 and 5 that would multiply and then subtract to get 17. So let's write out our factors over here. We have 12 and 1, 6 and 2, and 3 and 4. Factors of 5 are just 5 and 1. So we're subtracting to get 17. I know 5 times 4 is 20. And 3 times 1 is 3. 20 subtract 3 would be 17. And I need it to be a positive 17. So I'm going to have 3x and 4x. Then my 4 has to multiply by the 5, so my 5 will go here. And my 1 will be negative. Because since this was -3, this had to be -1 and positive 5. And then this is equal to 0, so I'm going to split them up. I have 3x plus 5 equals 0, and 4x subtract 1 equals 0. And then I'm going to solve them both, so subtract 5. 3x equals -5. Then I would divide by 3 to have x equals -5/3. Add my 1 here. So 4x equals 1, divide by 4. So x equals 1/4. And that would be my solution set. So I'd have -5/3 and 1/4. Put them on here. So we have -5/3 and 1/4. Go ahead and flip this page over. So our number 3, they give us z squared plus 18 equals 11z. To solve this one, I need it to be equal to 0 first, so I'm going to subtract my 11z over. There's nothing it can combine with. I'm just going to write it in the form of a quadratic equation. So I'd have z squared subtract 11z plus 18 equals 0. Now I'm going to factor this. So factors of 18 that add to get 11 would be 9 and 2. So I'd have z, and since it's subtracted, subtract 9, z, subtract 2. And then since it's factored, we'd break them apart. And my answers would be 9 and 2. Write those down. So 4, they don't have it multiplied out first for us, so we're going to have to go ahead and distribute that x, move that 6 over, and then factor it again. So just buckle down. We have x times 5x plus 13 equals 6. So I distribute this x, so I'd have 5x squared plus 13x, and I'm going to move my 6 over, subtract 6 equals 0. Now I'm looking for factors of 5 and 6 that subtract to get 13. So factors of 5 are 5 and 1. 6, I'd have 6 and 1. 2 and 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 1 is 2. 15 subtract 2 would be 13. It's a positive 13. So I'm going to have a negative 2 and a positive 3. So when we break this up, I'd have 5x and x. It's all going to equal 0. Now 5 has to multiply by 3, so it can't go in the same grouping. It has to go over here, so plus 3 here, subtract 2 there. Now then I'm going to break my binomials apart and solve. So 5x subtract 2 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. I'd add my 2 here. So 5x equals 2, and divide by my 5. So x equals 2/5. Subtract 3. X equals negative 3. So I'd have negative 3 and 2/5 as my answer. Okay, this one's a fraction. So the first thing I do when I have one that's a fraction is use the common denominator and get rid of the fractions. So the common denominator between 6 and 2 would be our 6. So we're going to go ahead. We have z squared divided by 6, subtract 3. Z over 2, subtract 6 equals 0. My common denominator is 6. So I'm going to multiply everything by 6. So 6 times z squared divided by 6, subtract 3z over 2, subtract 6. I'll write it out the first time. 6z squared over 6, subtract 18z over 2, subtract 36 equals 0. Now I'm going to simplify them. So I have z squared subtract 9z subtract 36 equals 0. Factors of 36 that subtract to get 9 would be 12, 3 and 12. So I'd have a negative 12 and a positive 3. So we have z plus 3 and z subtract 12 equals 0. Then we break them apart and have them both equal to 0. Y'all send me this problem if you have problems on the problem. So z equals negative 3 and z equals 12. So we'd have negative 3 and 12. I'm going to box this one since this is our factors. Write that down. Okay, number 6, we have another one that has fractions. So 4t squared divided by 5 equals t divided by 5 plus 21 over 10. So our common denominator on this one is going to be 10. So I'm going to go ahead and just multiply everything by the 10 instead of writing it out 3 times like I did last time. But I'll still take another step to simplify it instead of just doing it all in my head. So I have 40t squared divided by 5 equals 10t divided by 5 plus 210 divided by 10. Now then I'm going to go back and divide these by 5 and simplify them. So I'd have 8t squared equals 2t plus 21. Now then I'm going to get everything on the same side because I need it to be equal to 0. So when I go to move these, I'm going to subtract this 2t and subtract 21. So I'd have 8t squared subtract 2t subtract 21 equals 0. So now I need factors of 8 and 21 that are going to subtract to get 2. So we have 8 and 1, 4 and 2, 21 and 1, 7 and 3. And we're subtracting to get 2. Well, 3 times 4 is 12. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 subtract 12 would be 2. And they want the highest one to be negative, and this one would be positive. So negative 7, positive 3. And let's break this up. So my first terms are my 4 and my 2. So I have 4t and 2t. Then I have a negative 7, and my negative 7 is being multiplied by that 2, so it has to go here because it can't multiply by it if it's in the same binomial. And then this plus 3 has to go here. It's all equal to 0. So we're going to break these apart into 2 different equations to solve for t. I'm going to add 7 first over here. So 4t equals 7 divided by 4. So t equals 7 divided by 4. Subtract my 3. 2t equals negative 3. Divide by 2. So t equals negative 3 halves. So I have negative 3 halves and 7 fourths. Go ahead and copy that down. I think I'll probably stop this first video after this next problem, so we're half and half. And that they don't end up way, way, way too long because they're already seeming a little long. Right. This one is already factored out, so we just have to go ahead and solve each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out over here. So I'd have x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract my 6, subtract my 6. X equals negative 6 is one of them. Then I have x subtract 5 equals 0. So I'd add my 5 here. So x equals 5 is one of them. Then we have 2x subtract 3 equals 0. I add my 3 and have 2x equals 3. Then I would divide by 2. So x would equal 3 halves as well. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do the last one. So on this one, we write these out. We're going to make this equal to 0. So I'd have y cubed subtract 4y equals 0. Because when I go to move this to this side, we have to subtract the 4y. Then the next step I'm going to do is factor out a y. So I'd have y times y squared subtract 4 equals 0. This is the difference of two squares. So I'd have y times y subtract 2 times y plus 2 equals 0. And then I break these all into the different sections. So I have y equals 0. That's one of my answers. Y subtract 2 equals 0. So when I add my 2 over there, I get y equals 2. And then I have y plus 2 equals 0. So when I move that 2 over, I get y equals negative 2. Alright, I'm going to stop this one for real this time. Why does it keep going down?